Wake up, wake up. Look who's back here at about 8:45 a.m. West Coast time. Damon Bruce, Larry Kruger with the latest and greatest 49ers news and more. Larry, good morning, man. What's going on?
Good morning, man. Hope everybody's had a great weekend, terrific weather, and bring on June. Bring on June, and now this is kind of the quiet time for football between now and camp.
A lot of cleaning in the house, Larry. A lot of bags filled, some donations made, backyard cleared out, new wood chips spread around, very productive, and good to see you, man. Good to see you. It was an awful lot of fun with Damon Amendolara doing a little reverse boycott. We can talk about that much later in the show, but it was just nice to see a whole bunch of great fans come out in Oakland. And look, we talk to great 49ers fans each and every show, and I think 49ers fans are starting to feel the same frustration that you and I are feeling, that content creators are feeling, that I'm sure everybody inside of the building in Santa Clara and wherever Team Aiyuk is headquarters got to be feeling, because we are stuck in and it feels like a contractual and negotiations stalemate between the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. You know what? Mike Silver went on KNBR and said that this deal right now hangs in the $26 million range. Okay, if annual average value is somewhere in that $26 million, can we bump up the guaranteed to get this done? We've had this conversation 15 times in our last 15 shows. We're tired of it. Everybody involved's got to be tired of it.
Well, and one of the things that kind of came up last week when I was sitting in with Guru on the game on Friday is we had Matt Barrows on, and Barrows brought up the fact that by staying away from the 49ers, Aiyuk does face potential fines, and they're not insignificant. They're potential fines totaling over $101,000, a number that's going to grow if he misses time during training camp. So, last offseason, Nick Bosa held out for his own contract extension. The 49ers decided to forgive his fines. They're legally allowed to do that by NFL bylaws because you can forgive the fines when a player is going from rookie contract to second contract. You can't do it when they're going from second contract to third contract and every subsequent offer every subsequent contract after that. So it's just, you have that one go around where they can waive the fines. And they did that last year for Nick Bosa, and Matt Barrows of The Athletic pointed out Friday that, there's no indication from the team that they're going to be lenient with Aiyuk. His quote was, all those fines will start piling up in the summer, and there's no indication that the 49ers will forgive Aiyuk for absences the way they did for Nick Bosa.
Well, were there any
that right there? If that is indeed the case, Damon, that right there could be a huge, huge deal in the locker room.
Were there any indications that Nick Bosa was going to be given these fine mulligans before it actually happened?
There were. Like, yeah. So like when during that whole process, many of us kind of, inquired towards John Lynch about the fines and they made it seem like, hey, look, we're all on the same page here. We're going to get this done. We're working together, all hunky-dory positive. And then sure enough, they forgave all those fines, and basically he didn't pay any of those fines. So are they going to do the same thing this time around with Aiyuk? I mean, we haven't had enough media time to actually ask that direct question to Shanahan or anybody empowered to answer it, so we really don't have an answer. It's kind of dangling at this point.
Well, and now we have Trent Williams sort of in the mix of unsatisfied with current contractual situation. Who released the story over the weekend? Who had it?
This is Jeremy Fowler, went on Sports Center on Saturday, and it's funny. It's like that becomes a 49er. His appearance on Sports Centers on Saturday always becomes like a 49er update. Seems like he's always updating things on the Niners. And if he either has a source that's trusted from within, obviously he feels good enough to go with it on SportsCenter on that level of a platform. But Trent Williams is signed through 2026. He's going to count $31.6 million against the cap this year. He's the fourth highest paid offensive lineman as far as AAV, average annual salary. And according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, he may soon be seeking a new deal. Fowler reported Saturday on SportsCenter that there are whispers around some in the NFL world that Trent Williams may want a new deal eventually. He's going to turn 36 next month. He remains, maybe not at the very tip top of his game, but near the top. He earned the second highest regular season grade, 89.9 from PFF among all offensive linemen last year. Only Penei Sewell from Detroit had a higher overall grade than Trent. He allowed only 18 pressures. He did not allow a sack last season. He's one of the best offensive linemen in pro football. He's a surefire Hall of Famer. He made his 11th Pro Bowl, and the third time he's been first team All Pro. So he signed a 6-year, $138.06 million contract in 2021, making him the highest paid offensive lineman at the time. And now we're kind of asking the question, well, how much longer is the guy going to play?
Right.
He said he told Eric Branch in Vegas during Super Bowl week that he'd like to play a couple more years, definitely this year, maybe next year. And he'd like to finish out his current contract. But, so we'll see. But now there's this report that, McCaffrey got paid, Juwan got paid, Aiyuk wants to get paid. And now Trent's saying, hey, don't forget about me. So there you go.
Right. And next year, Brock turns into the $55 million man. So,
and a lot of people are speculating that similarly to CMC, Big Trent may just be seeking a few more guaranteed dollars, to finish out his current deal. His current contract doesn't include any guaranteed money for the remaining years. So the 49ers currently have approximately $32.7 million in available salary cap space, but they're trying to roll over every penny if they can so that they can pay Purdy his $55 million or whatever next year. So we know their plan. No matter how much money they accrue with cap savings and restructures and that kind of thing, they are absolutely looking to roll the money over as they did from last year to this year. They want to do that from this year to next year. So we shall see. But, Trent Williams, once again, it's like when you have no guaranteed money left in your deal, you're always one injury away from just kind of being kicked to the curb. And I think he would like a few guaranteed dollars going forward. And we'll see if the Niners bow to that in the midst of trying to get a deal done with Aiyuk.
Unlike the Brandon Aiyuk situation, where there is a very deep wide receiver room and options, already revealing themselves behind him, Trent's in a very, very unique situation where there is no other Trent Williams on the team. There's no one who can even come in and give you a similar type of performance that, is all pro level performance across this offensive line. So if I'm the 49ers and I'm Parag, I drop any sort of airs about tough negotiations and we're going to try to get a little back here. And you just basically say, Trent, what makes you comfortable? What makes you happy? How much longer do you really want to do this? If you say 4, let's really call that 3. If you say 2 more years beyond this year, let's call that 1 more year beyond this year. Give us a little here. You are 36. Bodies do start creaking at a rapid rate at your age in this league. But there are very few guys that you don't even need to negotiate with. And he would be one of those guys. It's a Trent. What do you want? What do you need? What do you need to feel comfortable? What do you need to come in here and be the leader, the captain, and the man who sets the tone on this line of scrimmage until you decide you want to retire?
Only thing about that approach is that you're hugged up against the cap pretty much, considering what you have coming to pay, and you may not be able to satisfy him, the way, just fully across the board. So you may not want to approach him with what do you need, because you may have to say no.
Well, I think that Trent's the kind of guy you can ask, what do you need, without getting an unrealistic answer. Like Trent Williams has gone so thoroughly through this is a bad football team. This is a dysfunctional environment in which to have a career in with Washington, that I think he's really happy to be here. Like, I think he really understands that he's in a unique situation on a loaded team, and he's already, been able to ring the bell of highest paid at my position in football history. And And you don't need to really do that twice. You don't get to do that twice necessarily when you get into your 30s. I just think he's a reasonable guy who understands what healthy football is. And he knows that he's surrounded by it. And he doesn't want to be the one to disrupt it, but he wants to be the guy who's also got a little personal insurance. So, Trent, what do we need to ensure your happiness here with the 49ers? Because there are very few guys on this team that the Niners really have no leverage with. They have no leverage with Trent in any negotiation beyond, hey, you're getting a little old. That's it. I mean, what could they possibly say? What would they bring to that arbitration case to argue less money for Trent Williams? You're far, far and away the best offensive lineman in the game, much less our own locker room. So where's your negotiating point if you're the 49ers? I think this is one of those, Trent, what do you need? Please be reasonable. We want to keep a good thing going, and we certainly want to keep it going with you. And we know that you want to keep it going with us. So how do we just make this all go away and everybody happy real quick? And let's do that. I hope that that's the way it can go. Can one of these negotiations not be pulling teeth to the 11th hour? Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, I mean, I don't know that the McCaffrey one was.
That was sure. That came out of nowhere, though, right?
They
that was
got that done relatively. Well, the other thing here is that you've got a bunch of different whispers coming out of different areas as in regards to Aiyuk, and we could get into that. But I mean, Silver's saying that he thinks the Niners offer is $26 million in that range. That it's not Justin Jefferson money, that it's closer to Devontae Smith, Amon-Ra top type money. And this is a situation that's going to be really interesting to watch as well, because Aiyuk doesn't really, when it comes right down to it, he doesn't really have a ton of leverage. He can accept the 49ers offer. He can continue to hold out, but he would risk being fined further if they decide not to wipe those fines away. We'll find out about that. He also could potentially, if he doesn't report, lose out on accruing a year, and he could be facing the exact same dilemma next offseason. He could also play it.
That's DEFCON 1. Like, for Aiyuk to do that is,
well, I mean, okay, it's interesting you said that. So, and then alternately, Aiyuk could play out the 5th-year option at $14.1 million, but the Niners can still franchise tag him next year if they want, preventing him from hitting free agency next year.
Well, hey, at least that would get him that 29 to 31 million that he's looking for, right?
Well, the interesting thing to me is that Mayoko, who a lot of people feel is, I don't want to bash Mayoko, because Mayoko's a good buddy of ours. But some people feel like sometimes the Niners will put out their thoughts through Matt. And he came out of nowhere last week and said it's entirely possible. Now, where did this come from? Because this was not uttered at any presser. So this had to come from somewhere else. This is from Mayoko last week. He says it's entirely possible that they don't sign Brandon Aiyuk to a long-term contract and let him play out the final year of his deal and see where it goes from there. TJ Hushmanzada came out. He knows Aiyuk, says Aiyuk would like a Amon-Ra St. Brown type deal, but the Niners don't want to even give him that. And then, of course, you've got Pearsall and Cowing starting to show good things on the practice field during the OTAs and the mini camps. So you just kind of wonder about this, There's still a lot of smoke coming out of Pittsburgh that they expect that the Niners may trade one of their receivers. There was talk from Michael Lombardi. He went on a podcast. He went on the GM Shuffle podcast, and he said there was talk at the draft that Pittsburgh thought they had made a trade with the Niners, whether it was for Debo or whether it was for Aiyuk, I don't know. But then things kind of fell apart late. And now they're saying that, people are betting, well, of course, it's probably Debo and not Aiyuk. But, it's interesting. I mean, Debo, it wasn't that long ago that Debo was one of the most dangerous players in football. I mean, 2021, he had over 1,700 yards. He had 14 touchdowns. He got that incredible contract, $28 million a year, based on that. And now we've seen him kind of drop off the last couple of years. So it's interesting that they're saying that that Debo could be dealt at any time between now and the trade deadline.
By
And
the
that it's
way,
not a foregone conclusion that the Niners go the entire distance this year with Aiyuk and Debo on the roster.
look, to have this year identified, circled, bold, italicized, and underlined is a Super Bowl or bust year. You can't be trading wide receivers who are your one or two wide receiver in season like that. That just doesn't happen often. So like that to me feels like fantasy football. And I just don't think the 49ers are going to go about business like that. And now how they've gone about the business up to this point can certainly be criticized. But that to me feels like, well, that would be really unexpected. That's a new lever for them to pull.
Well, you kind of already said, I mean, that it would be, it would be a nuclear option to tell Aiyuk to play on the 5th-year option. And yet Mayoko, who, I don't know where this came from, but it came from somebody, right? He didn't just hatch this thought on his own out of nowhere. And he came out and put in print that it's possible that they don't get the deal done, let him play out the final year of his deal on the 5th-year option, and then see where it goes. And Silver kind of made the point where if the Niners don't, he kind of summed this all up last week in a tweet that I did a video on. And he basically said, hey, look, if Aiyuk rejects the Niners offer, then it's, a Hunger Games battle this year between Debo and Aiyuk to see who's more productive and who the Niners go forward with next year, because we assume it's Aiyuk, but if Aiyuk doesn't play ball with them and they can't get a deal done, and the Niner, it sounds like when you're reading the Mayoko blurb that they're putting out in the ether, hey, guess what? We don't have to do this deal, and we're perfectly happy to have him play on the 5th-year option at $14.1 million and deal with next year. So, that could keep the team together as far as nobody gets dealt, but they could basically tell Aiyuk, you know what, sit there and take it, and we'll tell you when we're offering an extension. And if that is indeed the case, Damon, well, what does Aiyuk then? How does he respond to that? Does he respond to that by being totally professional? If so, then maybe he stays. But if he responds to that by becoming an island unto himself, who knows? All of a sudden, Pearsall and Cowing get off to good starts in September, and you've got maybe Debo playing well, and you've got Aiyuk kind of pouting because they told him we're not paying you until next offseason. They may decide to pull the plug and trade him to Pittsburgh. Then could happen.
I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. Yeah, look,
there's a lot of options. I mean, there are a lot of options here, but don't. I mean, the media game. Don't you think it's a little bizarre that Matt Mayoko is saying that, putting out right in the midst of, there was a report in the last couple of days that the talks, are beginning to intensify, and that's kind of the direction that it's going to go.
What I think is a little bizarre is that if you and I have talked all this out and hashed this out months ago, like we were talking about this pre-Super Bowl, the 49ers have obviously played this chess game out in their own mind to several different conclusions. And they know their player better than we do. They've done deals with him. They've done a deal with him. They know his agent. They know him. And Aiyuk does seem to be the kind of guy who takes this very personally, and he doesn't have that, well, this is just business, but I'm going to go out and play my game. He does seem to be like level of personal angry that this has not happened. And it just feels like the 49ers have got a price point in mind that they will not come off of. And if that price point is not going to align with Brandon Aiyuk's price point, there should have been a trade pre-draft to have eliminated this. And again, if Aiyuk is a $30 million a year wide receiver in his own mind, well, the 49ers couldn't get a first rounder for him. I'm guessing I'm guessing the Justin Jefferson on the trade block would have commanded a first rounder. Jamar Chase, first rounder.
Well, there was also a report the Niners made an offer for Jefferson. I think most people would have to assume that Aiyuk was part of that offer. So then you're sitting there going, oh, wait a second. So you've already kind of thought about moving on from without me. And just because you have a good idea of where they're at and they've got a good idea of where you're at doesn't mean that you're not at an impasse. It just means that, hey, yeah, we know. I mean, the report came out from Ian Rappaport after the combine on Sunday of the combine. We're talking about way, way back in February when the combine was held in Indy, that the Aiyuk camp wanted to wait until all of the free agents and all of the receivers situations, clarified themselves before he signed with the 49ers. So that meant he wanted to wait on Jefferson, and now Jefferson signed. He wanted to wait he wanted to see the market reset itself before he, took the leap. And so that tells me, and should have told the Niners, this guy wants top of the scale money,
right?
Because he believes he's either at or near that top of the scale. And if the 49ers, let's just say, had said to themselves, we want this player for $23 million, and now maybe if Silver's reporting is accurate, that they're now at $26 million, well, it would be a deal if the guy wanted 25, right? But It's obviously not a deal if they're offering 26, and it's probably because he may want 30 and he may want 32. The NFL's highest paid receivers as far as AAV, Justin Jefferson, number 1, 35 mil. A.J. Brown, Philadelphia, number 2, 32 mil. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, number 3, just a shade over 30 mil. Tyreek Hill, number 4 at 30 mil. Jalen Waddle, number 5 at 28.25 mil. And then Devontae Adams at 28, number 6. Right there is where I think, then you got, Cooper Kupp and Devontae Smith. They're sitting there, 26-7, 25. That's basically where I think Ayuk's market is definitely between 25 and 30. I would say he should probably get no more than Tyreek Hill, no more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. That should be like the ceiling. Jalen Waddle seems like a perfect comp. 20, like Jalen Waddle got 28.25 million as his total deal. And if you look at what he has as far as total value of the contract, it's 84.7 mil. And as far as guaranteed money, Jalen Waddle got 76 million. I think that's right in line with what I think the 49ers should pay Aiyuk. So, and if they're at 26 and he's at 30, let's say he's at 30, 32, it's very possible that they're centering right there on the Jalen Waddle type money, but that's where he belongs. So
yeah, look, Brandon Aiyuk in his own mind thinks in a different system on a different team, I'm a 100 catch guy, and a high target guy, and I'm getting that Justin Jefferson treatment. And I don't know if he is that guy, but he's really good. Like, I don't want to pretend that Brandon Aiyuk isn't somewhere in that top 10, top 12 wide receivers in all of football. He really is. I think he is that good.
But we always group this with he's better than you think because of the people around him. But there's an advantage.
So if there is truth to that, then, Larry, then he was expendable and the Niners should have walked away. And if Kyle Shanahan really thinks wide receivers in my system are more plug and play than in other systems, he should have acted accordingly. And in a weird way, kind of that's what Kyle did, right? I mean, there hasn't been a lot of rookie wide receiver success on this team. But I guarantee you, if you walk back in a time machine and said to Brandon Aiyuk the day before the draft, you can sign for $28 million, $27.5 million right now, or you don't. And the 49ers are going to take a wide receiver in the first and the fourth round. Like, I think, we talk about this pretty much through the focus and the prism of the 49ers have delayed this, kind of screwed up their negotiation, twiddled their thumbs when they should have been more aggressive to get something done earlier in the conversation before value went up. Blah, blah,
it
blah,
takes
blah,
two to tango.
It does.
Really.
And it feels like a team Aiyuk has misplayed this a little bit too. And going back to what you were saying, Larry, what if Ricky Pearsall is leading all rookie receivers in catches for the first 3 weeks and Brandon Aiyuk is held out? What if Ricky Pearsall comes on in and looks real good and real comfortable right away, and then Cowing, a big first down in week 2, and now all of a sudden, hold on, what do we got here? What's going on? And then Aiyuk, I think, is a little bit more in trouble. I mean, how much leverage does he really have? The answer, truthfully, is not much. And he's going to.
But everybody always throws that out. That Aiyuk had 3 receptions in the Super Bowl and 3 receptions in each playoff game, but it's because he's on this team with all these other weapons. Yeah, but there's also some benefit to being on this team with all these other weapons. Teams can't totally focus on you and taking you away and leaning all the coverage towards you. So because you have other guys. So yeah, would he catch more balls if he were the singular receiver on a team that didn't have Kittle and CMC? And yeah, absolutely. He would. But he also would take more hits. He would get more defensive attention. He would get more defensive focus and scrutiny, and he'd have to be able to stand up to that. So it's like, yeah, he could be better if he were, his stats could be better if he were on a team with fewer weapons, but he also benefits from being on a team with this many weapons. I mean, you have a defense, and there's only so many guys you can defend and take away. There's 5 eligibles. Yeah. Does it help that the other eligibles are good? Well, it hurts his overall touches because there's other guys getting touches, but in some ways it kind of helps him because he doesn't have the focus of the defense all on him.
Let me ask you this question. Let's say Brandon Aiyuk today was involved in a skiing accident. He breaks his femur, right? So the deal was done. There's no acrimony. Brandon Aiyuk was going to play this year, but now for whatever bad happenstance, he's not playing this year. Are the 49ers still a playoff team?
I think so.
So do I. So that means he's losing even more leverage, right? Like if we go to the playoffs without you, then how really important with you? See, that's the thing. Like you come back to Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, either one of those guys goes down. I don't know if you're a playoff team. Trent Williams especially. Like Trent Williams is worth more to the 49ers than
Atomic
Brandon
Protons says Damon, knock on wood, not cool. LOL. Yeah,
fair enough.
You can't talk about fantasy injuries. You gotta. That's bad karma. Bad karma.
You also can't be afraid of thought exercises. Okay, I mean, come on. Again, if my words affected sports outcomes,
knock on wood. That's all we'll say. Nobody wants to,
again, but if my words can affect outcomes, I'm going to tell you right now, Indiana would be in every Final Four you've ever watched in your lifetime. So stop it.
But I mean, they're in a pickle right now because they could. I mean, it's not like this has to get done with the 49ers paying Aiyuk more than they want to. They don't have to. If it gets to that point, and it sounds like we're already there, they can just kind of let him sit and they can let him wait. And if he wants to play, eventually he'll come back. He doesn't have a lot of leverage other than the holdout. And as you said, they kind of took care of themselves by going with Pearsall and Cowing and re-signing JJ. They're very deep at wide receiver. They don't necessarily need. Obviously Aiyuk's their best wide receiver, so you always need him. But they're fortified there. They have 11 wide receivers of NFL caliber that they're going to camp with. So it's not like the cupboard's bare. There are other spots. Like if Trent Williams pulled this, man, they have real problems because the cupboard's really bare at left tackle behind Trent Williams. But the cupboard is not bare at wide receiver behind Debo and Aiyuk. Right.
It's unproven, but it's not bare. There is a difference.
There's guys there. There's names there.
For a team that has done throughout the entirety of the Shanahan era a very good job keeping a a happy, getting along with each other, cohesive locker room. It just feels like this whole tug of war between Brandon Aiyuk or Debo Samuel. One of them is gone. One of them stays. One will be the favored son. The other will be kicked to the curb. Like, this is how some ripples of acrimony and players taking sides happens in a locker room. Like, I don't like the way it's setting up. And I also think the 49ers are smart enough to know that this isn't a good way to set up a year where you're trying to win the whole thing once and for all. And that's just, I don't know. There's a lot I don't like about this.
This is what makes it so hard to win Super Bowls. Especially when you get some older players that are making some money, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, it gets hard to keep a championship idea together at the end of the idea when everyone starts saying more money, please.
D says I trade Aiyuk to a pass-friendly team for a star defensive tackle or a star right tackle.
Well, didn't they try to do that? And I don't know what Brandon Aiyuk is going to. I don't think Brandon Aiyuk fetches a star straight up trade. No one's trading a star defensive tackle or right tackle to the 49ers, right?
Well, you don't know. I mean, we don't know. I mean, yeah, Tristan Wirfs is holding out in Tampa. We don't know how the wide receiver market's going to go. Who's going to get hurt?
We put out a short about the Tristan Wirfs possible trade. I get violent reaction from Tampa Bay fans who are like, the two of you need to stop taking peyote. He's not going anywhere. He's just, negotiating a contract right now. He's not about to be traded. And I would believe that. So,
I mean, that's basically the way it is across the league. Anybody who's holding out, there's always going to be speculation about trades, and some happen and some don't. For the vast majority don't get dealt, but you never know. I mean, the other situation is that, receivers oftentimes, young receivers, like there's a lot of receivers in the draft, but receivers in the draft take time to develop. And if you're one of these guys like Trent Baalke and you need your receivers to play and play well right away, all of a sudden it's like, suddenly, well, I could wait on this rookie receiver. And they went with the LSU rookie receiver this year, didn't they?
But they're gonna wait. He's a football guy, Larry.
Oh, you got to take you're great at bringing up the comment. You're bad at taking it down.
Well, I just wanted to leave that there for a second, but I just
marinate in it. Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, the thing about the BA thing is, it's why. Always ask yourself why. Why is Matt Mayoko reporting that the 49ers could let him play on the 5th-year option? Why is that coming out?
Well, I like Matt an awful lot too. I think he's a valuable source. He's really good at his job. He deserves the respect of every single 49er fan. Not a single local beat writer has broken a fraction, not a scintilla of news about the 49ers in the, 15 to 20 years that I've been covering the team. So, just maybe he's got a little something, a little nugget that he's reporting. But there's anything that is broken news about the 49ers comes from someone with a connection to the NFL Network. The local writers.
Well, that was Ian Rappaport, and he said in February, he said the Aiyuk deal is not going to get done until late in the offseason because Ayuk's going to wait until everybody else signs, and so he can get the most money. So that's what's going on right now, and but then the question is, if you have Mayoko putting that out there, I got to think that somebody said to him, hey, look, we don't have to do this. You may want to put that out there, and because that is the inherent truth of this situation, is that they don't need to bow to the requests of Brandon Aiyuk if they don't want to.
No, they don't have to. But again, that's really not how business is done in the NFL. So you're telling a guy we don't value you the way other teams value their best players. If you're
sometimes it is though. Like Khalil Mack got asked for a big number through Joel Siegel and got dealt.
Right, but look who we're talking about, right? The Raiders at their very worst, at their most poorly run. It was that was.
But the 49ers are in a unique situation here in that they are a very deep football team that's going to have to pay their quarterback $50 million. So there is no bigger cap adjustment than, hey, you know what? our quarterback we're paying $900,000 to. Oh, our quarterback this year we're paying $52.7 million to.
Right, he's going to make 50 times the money that he's making.
There's no bigger jump than paying your quarterback $1 million to $50+ million. So I don't think their cap crunch is made up. Let's just
going back to checkers, not chess. The 49ers should have done all the calculus of this before the draft, right? They should have known. They should have seen it coming, and they should have done something. They waited, and unless they really are going to be like it's your rookie year, $14 million, fuck you, good luck, don't get hurt. I mean, I just don't.
It sounds like that's on the table as one of the options.
If that is on the table, Brandon Aiyuk is going to then demand a trade. And they don't have to acquiesce to that either. But that's what's going to happen. And now you got real anger. This is more than just I'm taking the word 49er off my Instagram account anger. Now it gets nasty. And I just don't think that that's what the 49ers need. And I've been trying to say this for the last 10 minutes. You know who I do feel bad for? Is Debo Samuel. Like the one guy who is here and is in great shape and has been a really good Niner and has played really well in some big games. Everyone's talking about how he's definitely the one that's gone, and the guy who ain't even here yet is the one who's got to remain. Like Debo has handled this with a level of professionalism that I think needs just a little saluting on our end. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, he was taken care of.
He was taken care of, but now
why we're applauding him for showing up to a job where he's handsomely paid, a contract that he just basically
he's not
signed.
Walking around like all pissed off about this.
Why should he be pissed off? He's making $28 million a year.
But Larry, these guys got pride, and no one wants to hear their name involved in rumors, especially when their name was said he will not be involved in a trade rumor. And then right before day of the draft, what do you know? He is on the table after all, even though the 49ers said they're not on the table. Somebody asked him about it in the press conference. So obviously everybody knows about it. So, that's kind of the conversation you don't want people having about you. And then he's here. He's playing well. He's looking good. He's in shape. He's got the new jersey number. He went from junior to senior with the birth of his son. Like, I don't know. Like, it just feels like the one guy who is here putting in the work is the one guy everyone's like, yeah, and the first chance of him being out of here, he's fucking gone, man. Debo, he's not going to be here in 2025. Guaranteed that. Debo gone.
Yeah, but that's not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed.
But people talk about it as if it's already fait accompli.
Yeah, and he's not going to be upset about it because he's already gotten paid. He's already gotten his money. He's already made. He's making big coin. And so it's like they took care of him ahead of time. So he's taken care of. There's no reason for him to be anything but, absolutely happy.
Of these guys, but Larry, look, some of these guys, it's just not all about the money, especially when it gets taken care of. Then it's about the respect and my status as the leader on this team. And I'm a captain. And you're saying that I'm the first guy out the minute, Aiyuk signs. Like he's a human. Right? He's not just a wide receiving robot. He is a human. And I think there's got to be a little like, come on, man. Like, I'm here.
Okay, well, let's go back. Okay, that's the Debo Samuel perspective, according to you. Now let's throw the 49er perspective. We paid you based on a year where you had 1,700 plus total yards and 14 touchdowns. And the 2 years since have been filled with injuries and a severely reduced role. Where his numbers have dropped. This guy went from the, he could do it all weapon. He's a running back. He's a receiver. He's a wide back. He's everything to, he's taken a clear backseat to Aiyuk among receivers. He's taken a clear backseat to CMC among runners. He's just not, his numbers have gone down the last couple of years. So, and he's still being paid based on his 2021 season. So, I mean, there's no reason for Debo to be anything but pleased. And as far as the future, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. It's like if he plays really, really well and Aiyuk doesn't, they'll re-sign Debo. If Aiyuk plays really, really well and Debo doesn't, they'll re-sign Aiyuk. If they both play really, really well, they'll either re-sign both or pick. But ultimately, I I think that a lot of people are assuming he's gone because the assumption is the Niners want to sign Aiyuk long-term more than they want to sign Debo to another long-term deal. And that's true, but that might be Aiyuk at 23 to 26 million. If Aiyuk's at 32 to 33 million, or who knows, maybe they're in the pie in the sky. They want Jefferson kind of money. But I mean, maybe they want just a shade under Jefferson. What if he wants 34 million AAV? Then maybe the Niners sit there and say, you know what? Pearsall's playing well. Cowing's playing well. Aiyuk wants the moon. Debo's bounce back. I mean, I think a lot of these things are predicated on how these players play this year.
Debo's one good year away from being underpaid, right?
Well, and he's one good year away from potentially being the receiver they choose to extend and move off of Aiyuk. I mean, we assume they're going to stay with Aiyuk, but Ayuk's worth more in a trade market. Ayuk's going to want more. I mean, look at it last time. Last time they got into this pinch, they had DeForest Buckner and they had Eric Armstead. Guess who was the better player? DeForest Buckner. Guess who deserved more money? DeForest Buckner. Guess who got more money? DeForest Buckner. Guess who moved on? DeForest Buckner. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, is Aiyuk better? Yes. Does he deserve more? Yes. Do more Niner fans prefer Aiyuk to Debo? I would answer that question yes. But it does not mean that Debo's gone and Ayuk's going to stay. And I think DeForest Buckner is proof of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're looking for an example of the Niners screwed that up, that's certainly one of them.
I mean, you can definitely say they screwed it up because, Buckner went on and played really well and commanded double teams in Indy and just signed another new deal.
Right. And Armstead was always very good. And Kinlaw,
but you did go to a Super Bowl. You went to a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl with Armstead, and you got some good years out of him. And you chose Armstead and Jimmy Ward and the masses over paying DeForest Buckner. So, okay, you didn't pay DeForest, but he was the better player and he got moved on. So, there's a chance that Aiyuk gets moved on if he doesn't play ball. I mean, ultimately, they gambled that DeForest Buckner, with Joel Siegel representing him, was not going to play ball with them as much as Eric Armstead and whoever was representing him. And they probably were right. And Armstead probably did play better ball with them and made nice and took their deal. And Buckner would have wanted more. Well, we'll see how this plays out second time around with Debo and Aiyuk. And now you've got Cowing and Pearsall in the mix to kind of lessen the blow on, losing a receiver. So they've clearly set themselves up. It's like when you're looking to make a trade, you establish a surplus and deal off your surplus. Well, the Niners have done that. They've established a surplus at wide receiver, and now we're just kind of waiting. Are they going to trade off of that surplus that they've established? A lot of people think they are.
Well, again, and when would have been the most valuable return on that trade? I say that they've already walked past that doorway as well, which means...
But there's also risk at that point. Like if you trade them on draft day, you're right. You probably get more on draft day, but then you have to go forward going, well, can we land another receiver? And then what does that receiver look like? If you play it the way they're playing it right now, you draft the receiver, you draft two receivers, then you go to minicamp and you see what they look like. And then suddenly they're looking really good in minicamp. Then you go to training camp. What do they look like there? And suddenly if you're getting good answers of what those guys are looking like, now you've kind of mitigated some of that risk. So there's different ways to, I understand what you're saying. They could have gotten more draft capital if they had gotten it done on draft day. But as far as safe, in some ways, it's safer to do it the way they're doing it, which is draft some replacements, get them in your system, see if they can produce in your system. And once they do produce in your system, then pull the trigger on a trade. And who knows? That might be their plan. I don't know,
it just feels like there's a lot of thumb twiddling and there are more signs of it feels like everyone knows what is going to happen, but no one has the balls to actually do it. Right? So here's what's going to happen. Brock
What's going to
Purdy's
happen?
making about $60 million, meaning that you should have loaded up in an even more robust draft class right now because you need rookie deals and younger players on smaller contracts going forward immediately. And Brandon Aiyuk is at a price point that is going to make him cost prohibitive in a cap sport. So he's gone. So you probably should have just dealt him already, but you don't want to do that because you're in your Super Bowl window. But now here, it just feels like they really thought that everyone was going to come and fit together in a perfect puzzle piece. And that was the miscalculation. I don't know if the Niners anticipated Brandon Aiyuk playing this much hardball for the top shelf price point on the liquor shelf. And if they didn't see that coming, shame on them, because they probably should have. And I don't know. It's just, they drafted 2 wide receivers. So that means Brandon Aiyuk should be traded right now then. If you like what you see out of Ricky Pearsall and you think that he's just going to not come in at a price point that keeps your team together. Oh, and then Trent Williams wants more money. Okay, so now we really got to do it. It feels like the 49ers know that there's a Band-Aid that needs to be ripped off here more than a price point that needs to be applied here. And I don't know. I don't know. You don't have to do anything on the players' timeline. You get to use the league's timeline. And I guess one team is a big wide receiver injury from maybe now wanting to trade for Brandon Aiyuk.
Then there's also other, there's a bevy of other wide receivers that are kind of in this boat, right? I mean, you got T. Higgins kind of holding out in Cincinnati. What's going to happen there? You got Cortland Sutton in his situation with Denver. What's going to happen there? I think isn't there a third receiver that I can't think of that is in some kind of a contractual snafu. But I mean, it's just, we're going to find out. We're going to find out if they're going to pay Debo, if they're going to pay Aiyuk. I've heard people suggest they're going to pay neither. That they're going to let both wide receivers walk. The one thing about the receiver position is that, there is great depth of receivers every year. So it's not a supply and demand issue. The demand is great, but the supply is great. It's not like quarterback where the demand is far greater than the supply. The demand for wide receivers is high, but the supply of good wide receivers is also high. So you've seen teams make trades. You saw A.J. Brown go from Tennessee to Philadelphia, and Tennessee tried to replace him in the draft with the Arkansas wide receiver, and it just hasn't happened, on that front. So, I mean, it's risky. It's risky. I mean, the draft, I love the draft and I follow the draft, but the reality is that the draft is failure ridden. So, almost anybody who's trading, people are like, you can't trade this guy for a number 1 pick. It's like, I could make the argument that you shouldn't trade Brandon Aiyuk for a number 1 pick because Brandon Aiyuk for sure is a player. The number 1 pick, a first round draft choice, is a speculation. They're speculative.
Yeah, nothing proves
and there's a hit. There's a miss rate
until you're playing in the NFL. We say that all the time. I say that all the time.
Kinlaw was a number 1. They got a mid number 1 for Buckner, but it turned out to be Kinlaw. Well, Kinlaw's not Buckner.
Hey, how about Trey Lance? You ever heard of that guy?
But I'm just saying, when you have a player that's a good player, that player is worth more like 2 picks than 1 pick because there's a failure rate. And so if you're going to trade the bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. Well, you know what? Buckner is the bird in hand. Aiyuk is the bird in hand. The draft choices are the speculative deal. So, it's funny. People are like, oh, you're not going to get a number 1. You probably should get 2 number 1s. If you're really because Aiyuk is a true, if you think Ayuk's a number 1 receiver and he's borderline 1-2, but he's right there. He's a top tier receiver. He's probably worth more than just a first round pick because you're talking about, a first round pick may be a bust where you're not getting a bust. You're getting a sure thing. So it's almost like you should go 2 for 1. But, we'll see the way this whole thing shakes out. But I think Silver kind of laid it out there correctly. If Pearsall's here and is going to be here long term, Debo may or may not be here long term. If Aiyuk doesn't take their offer, then literally it's Aiyuk and Debo competing against each other for which one is more likely to get a contract extension next offseason, and the other probably gets traded. But they're probably, the reality is that with a $55 million quarterback, which is probably what they're going to have, and a roster full of star-studded players, you probably can't have Debo and Aiyuk.
And George Kittle.
Yeah. So something's going to have to give.
Yeah. No, that's why this is the last best chance. The last best chance for them to win a Super Bowl. Welcome.
I don't know if it's the last best chance. Shanahan's a relatively young man. Purdy's a relatively young man. To me, your Super Bowl window is propped open or shut closed based on, do you have the right head coach? Do you have the right quarterback? And that's where the Super Bowl window begins. So to me, their Super Bowl window is going to remain open because of Shanahan and Purdy, I believe.
We'll see. But if you got to trim, so if you are no longer you definitely have the best roster in the NFL, you're favored in every game. Again, you're getting further away from theoretically winning a Super Bowl than closer to it. They're favored in every game that they are scheduled to play this year, with a roster that will be thoroughly unsustainable beyond this year. So that's why it is correctly phrased by me as the last best chance. And you can have your wishing on a star and a quarterback and a coach and all that stuff, but the team will be
wishing on a star. I mean, that is the equation. If you want to say who wins Super Bowls, great head coaches and elite quarterbacks. I mean, we could go through the entire league right now and tell you who's got a chance to win the Super Bowl. And the 49ers have a chance to win the Super Bowl, and it's because of Shanahan and Purdy that they have that chance. The rest of the team matters, don't get me wrong. But
you should definitely just tell Trent Williams, don't even bother showing up. They overspent on Bosa. Tell Fred Warner to beat it. Come on. It's all they
have good talent, But I'm saying if you could have Trent Williams and your Super Bowl window could be firmly closed. You could have their window is open. It's like, so let's just have this quick discussion. We're in the NFL right now. If you go with my assumption that you have to have a great head coach and a really good quarterback to win a Super Bowl, well, how many teams in the NFL actually have that? Okay. Just a really good head coach and a really good quarterback that you can win a Super Bowl with. Arizona, no. Seattle, no. The Rams, yes. The Niners, yes. Panthers, no. Falcons, no. Saints, no.
Right, we don't have to do this, Larry. I get
Buccaneers,
it.
No. I mean, we can we're already almost there.
I get it.
Chicago, no. Minnesota, no. Green Bay, probably people would say yes. Detroit, I would say no. Washington, no. Giants, no. Eagles, maybe. Dallas, no. Chargers, yes. Herbert and Harbaugh. Broncos, no. Raiders, no. Chiefs, yes. Titans, no. Colts, no. Jaguars, no.
What are you doing?
Texans,
what are you doing?
yes.
We get this, Larry. We get it. I'm
just saying there's really only like 3 or 4 teams in pro football that have the quarterback and the head coach to have the Super Bowl window actually open. And it's like the Niners, the Chargers, the Chiefs. There's like 5 teams. And those teams are the teams that have the best chance to win the Super Bowl. So I guess I'll push back on the notion.
So now here, okay, we'll just take your thought exercise a little bit further. So only really good teams with really good quarterbacks and head coaches show up to the Final Four. And now the rest of the team, since we all got good quarterbacks and good head coaches, the rest of the team probably decides who wins the son of a bitch after all. So again, the Niners are loaded right now. The Niners are absolutely loaded right now. They will probably be less loaded next year. What are we debating? I know you agree with this.
I just don't believe. I don't subscribe to the theory that their Super Bowl window is closing.
I didn't say that. I said it's their last best chance. They will still have a chance, but their best chance.
Well, I don't know if I would agree with that, because it's a volatile. You sign different free agents. You draft different players. They've shown a propensity to draft, franchise altering type players in the last 5 or 6 years. So it's all kind of just predicated on just what you do, right? And who you sign and who you draft. I mean, it's, but they have the head coach who's relatively young, and they have the quarterback who's relatively young. And they're probably one of like 5 teams in football that have the quarterback and head coach who are in place and can win a Super Bowl. So, I mean, I think their window's kind of, staying open for the next 4 or 5 years.
All right. Warren Sharp, who I know we both really like. He's good. By the way, like and subscribe, good people. Larry and I are normally not fighting over the things that we're agreeing on, but today we are. Warren Sharp said that the 49ers, by the way, it's tough for the dink and dunk crowd this morning. The Niners led the NFL in plays of 30-plus yards last year. They had 36 of them. No team had 35. No team had 34. Green Bay had 33 of them, followed by Miami and the Los Angeles Rams, tied for 32 plays. So Kyle Shanahan leads the league in 30-yard plays last year, and then his direct coaching tree comes in the next 3 spots with LaFleur, McDaniel, and McVay in terms of explosive plays.
Well, and then if you combo that with that other article that's out right now that showed that the Niners only had 9 dropped passes all year, that Brock Purdy's offense produced a total of 9 drop passes, 37 in 2022, 26 in 2021, 34 in 2020, 9 in 2023 with Brock Purdy. So not only do they take shots down the field and they throw the ball down the field, they also don't have a lot of drops, which is another good sign for Purdy.
Which is was also another sign of Brandon Aiyuk too, right? Like saying, hey, you use me very little. Like it's weird that the argument that the 49ers don't need to pay their wide receivers very much because they throw the ball the least amount in the league. Doesn't that almost make what your wide receiver does on his less than other attempts more important, not less important than the rest of the league? Like, I don't understand how that correlates, but I don't even want to get down that road again. By the way, the 3 worst teams on this list, the least amount of 30-yard plays, are the Raiders, the Patriots, and Carolina. So those are the 3 worst, but
they have no weapons. I mean, think about those teams.
The Raiders got Devontae Adams.
But they have no quarterback. I mean, the Raiders, they have no weapons or they have no quarterback. I mean, the Patriots had horrendous offensive, skill position guys. The Raiders, have a great receiver, but Aiden O'Connell throwing the pill. It's like you got to have a quarterback and you got to have weapons to throw the ball down the field. Those 3 teams don't.
Niners Nation brought up and I really do think that this is maybe where Kyle's lying just a little bit, because it feels like there might be a little bit of a changing of the 49ers offensive style, especially if we're going to exist in a universe where Brandon Aiyuk is on the field week 1 and Ricky Pearsall looks good, and you just paid Juwan Jennings, so you might as well use him this year. Plus there's this guy named Debo. Plus your wide receiver is probably no further away from being the 15th best your running back is in the top 15 wide receivers in football, plus George Kittle. Niners Nation said with the addition of 2 extra receivers, many believe that the 49ers may shift their offensive identity to involve more 3 receiver sets, which has become the norm in a more pass-happy NFL nowadays. Does Coach Kyle Shanahan agree with the shift in thinking, or does he believe San Francisco will continue to operate similarly? And he says, no, I don't think we're going to have a change in philosophy on anything. You just name 5 wide receivers. Apparently they were brought up in the question. And you usually keep 6. Sometimes you keep 5 and then 3 on the practice squad. So it's kind of how the numbers work out, and we have a couple of guys who've been here a while that we lost for free agency, and you have to replace those guys. Like, I kind of believe that Kyle's not going to change his offensive philosophy, but more wide receivers is what you got. And I think more wide receivers is what you're going to want to use. And the more you do that, the more guys you get out of the box, the more you get Christian McCaffrey as a single back, more running lanes and running room. Like, I think stretching the field out isn't something that Kyle should be like adverse to doing, especially if he's got the talent to do it.
I don't think he's adverse to that. I think he just was asked, are they going to run with more 3 wides? And he said, hey, look, we don't plan any changes to our.
Well, you'd also be stupid to be like, yes, we're definitely going to do that 80% of the time. So everybody take that note and start preparing for it right now. I don't.
Right. I mean, there's no advantage in saying it, but he, I was sitting in the room when he answered that question. I mean, he was believable when he said, hey, look, we don't plan to have any dramatic changes or departures from what we've done offensively. Now, the numbers can fluctuate from week to week, depending on matchups and so on and so forth. But he, wanted to make it perfectly clear that, they're a 2-back offense, and they're going to go a lot of 21 and 22 personnel. Yes, they have a bevy of receivers, but it's not going to be, 3 wides left and right. It is interesting though, because they did go with a lot of 2 tight end looks down the stretch, with Fred Warner or with Charlie Warner and George Kittle. And they used Charlie Warner as that extra blocker to try to get the run game going. And so as the weather,
he was good. Charlie Warner's going to be missed in this running game.
He's a very good run blocker. There's no question about it. So they did go with a lot of 2 tight end looks last year. Now, when you take Warner off the field and you add, Logan Thomas and Mason Pline and those guys and Cam Latu and Braden Willis, are you going to go 2 tight ends the same amount of time, less snaps? And if so, then what takes those snaps? Do you go, do you go 1 back, 3 wides? Do you go with the 22 personnel, 21 personnel, go with the 2 backs? I mean, they have a lot of choices now because they've added Garendo, they added Schrader in the backfield, they added Cowing, they added Pearsall, they added a couple tight ends. So they do have some depth of weapons where they could switch it up if they want, but he's kind of, I don't know. He made it seem like, hey, you know what? There may be some changes week to week, but don't expect, just 3 wides all the time. And I think it was Mayoka that asked that question, and he didn't hedge on it. It wasn't like, well, we could, and we'll see week to week. He's like, no, we don't plan any changes to our offense. So,
if you think the other team's got a stud, inside corner, nickel corner, then you lean away from the 3 wide receiver set and you go double tight end or power. I just think that the 49ers should be totally adaptable to any and all things. Like, isn't that the whole point of being a great play caller and a great play designer, is that you got wrinkles that other teams really aren't anticipating and you play a little left-handed at times. So maybe Kyle's setting up. I just know that, when Jillian goes out and orders a whole bunch of new towels for the bathroom on Amazon, we don't wait to use them. Like, we put them in play right away. Well,
that is the debate. Like somebody was asking today on Twitter, who's going to be the breakout fantasy football player? And they listed a bunch of options, and I threw out, well, what about Pearsall? But other people would laugh at that and be like, oh, no way, Pearsall is going to be a 3rd or 4th wide receiver at best. He's not going to get that kind of run, but you just never know. It depends. If he's in lockstep with Purdy and productive every week, then he's probably going to play. They are asking the question, who is the fantasy football breakout candidate? And they've got Terry McLaurin in Washington. They have Zach Moss, a running back in Cincinnati, who's now the new. They've got Jameson Williams, the receiver, the Bama receiver in Detroit. Zay Flowers, the 2nd-year receiver in Baltimore, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, the number 3 wide receiver in Seattle, and then Ladd McConkey, the rookie from Georgia, who may wind up being the number 1 receiver for the Chargers. I mean, I'll say this. There's an awful lot of talk about the Niners talking to Pittsburgh about a receiver. But to me, the team that absolutely should be knocking on the Niners' door about Aiyuk or Debo is Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. I mean, they want to win right away there. They got rid of Mike Williams. They got rid of Keenan Allen. They're leaning on a rookie and Lad McConkey. They've got a premier young quarterback in a lot of people's minds, and Justin Herbert. Talk about a team that, potentially could be a Super Bowl contender. It's the Chargers. If Harbaugh can work his magic in year one and turn that program around, but they don't really have a veteran receiver. Like if I were the Chargers, I'd be calling the Niners twice a day, seeing if I could try Debo or Aiyuk. Because if they could get Debo or Aiyuk, they could win the AFC.
Kansas City Chiefs probably don't get their phone call answered by the Niners, but don't you think that they should be full guns ablazing for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk too? Although they're the team that said they're the team that said we can't pay a wide receiver $30 million. So if they weren't going to do that for Tyreek Hill a couple of years ago, they certainly won't do it for Brandon Aiyuk now. Not to mention the Niners would never, ever make that deal.
Well, I mean, the Niners have the Charles Haley deal in their past. So, I mean, that would almost be the revisiting of the Charles Haley deal. You just don't find your number one competitor and give them the piece that they don't have. Oh, you know what? Dallas doesn't have an edge rusher. Give them Charles Haley. Oh, now they won 3 Super Bowls. Chiefs don't have a receiver. Well, now they've already won the last 2 Super Bowls. Now they're going to win the next 3, because you gave them a receiver. So, I would not be in a price for the Chiefs. If the Chiefs call, the price for them is double.
It's 2 first-round picks, and we have the rights to Oklahoma Joe's and all the barbecue coming out of that place going forward.
Yeah, you can't trade them to the Chiefs, and if you do, you have to get a premium, absolute premium. If you did,
I just think there's been a heavy investment in that wide receiver room, and to not bring it to bear would just be silly. It'd be a little foolhardy, especially if Aiyuk is back. I mean, then you got Debo, you got Aiyuk, you got Jennings. Those are the first 3 guys up. If Pearsall is anything, he unseats one of those guys, and now your 4th wide receiver is Jennings, and you don't want Jennings not on the field. Trent Taylor is on this team. What is Cowing? Danny Gray, is he ever going to become more than a rumor? Does he turn into an actual person at any point in time in his 9 or 10 year? If he doesn't do it now, it won't happen. As a matter of fact, the next thing I want to get into is players on the clock in Santa Clara. And Danny Gray's got to be right up there with all of them, right? Danny Gray.
No doubt. I mean, he's a 3rd-round draft choice. And a couple of years ago, you get a year. When you're a day 2 pick, you get a year to redshirt. He got that year. Then he had an injured year. Now it's go time or he's cut.
Well, and Danny Gray's got to leap over Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell just to become the last guy who might be cut on this team.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they have a lot of receivers. They've established them. They've put themselves in a position where they have so many receivers. I mean, most teams keep 5. The Niners have Aiyuk, Debo, Pearsall, Cowing, and JJ. Those are their 5. So that means they would cut Ronnie Bell, Chris Conley, Danny Gray, Trent Taylor, Tariq Owens, Tay Martin. They would all get cut. I don't know. To me, that's there's some good players there.
There are.
So I don't know. I don't know if they might be at their end of their rope with Danny Gray and Tay Martin, some of these guys. They might just be like, hey, they're always going to be practice squad guys, or they may move one of their better receivers and promote one of those guys. I think Danny Gray is going to have a good camp. We'll see, though. I mean, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think he's got an NFL future. Trent Taylor, I don't think makes the team. I think he's here for insurance purposes as in the return game. Conley's big and fast and is a veteran, so he's easy guy to keep. And then after that, who knows? I mean, Tariq Owens is super raw. Tay Martin has got great ball skills, but he doesn't separate all that well. Danny Gray separates, but doesn't make a lot of plays. Ronnie Bell has got maybe the best ball skills of any of their receivers, but he's kind of ordinary as far as, height, weight, speed. So, maybe he's a low ceiling kind of a performer. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that they're going to have to look at here receiver wise, but they do have, like, if they want to trade a receiver, I mean, they definitely have the depth to plug somebody else in there as the 5th or 6th guy and just keep rolling.
Again, more players on the clock in Santa Clara, and it doesn't mean they're not going to make the team, but just like you're losing grip on a position that you should be getting further grip of. I look at Spencer Burford. Like you can't be replaced by a young player when you're still a young player yourself. And if Burford loses out to Pooney, that'd be awful for Spencer Burford's, position and status, not just on the team, but in the NFL. That wouldn't be good for him at all. And Jake Brendel, I know that he's battling a bulky knee right now. That's why he's not out there. But if Feliciano really beats him out at center, you're maybe cut. Especially if they're keeping Zakel, the kid from Florida. Zakel, yeah. So
yeah,
Nick.
Well, I don't know if they're keeping Zakel, but I mean, the guy to me who looks really good in minicamp is the Stanford, Michigan center, Drake Nugent. So, does Nugent or any of their other guys, Zakel or Kingston or any of the guys that they have take, do these guys give Brendel a run for his money at center? I think there's a very good chance of that. And then, does Pooney start at right guard? I think they're trying to kind of force feed him there. Does he share right guard with Burford? That could be an option as well. But yeah, it's a big year for Burford for sure. I mean, he regressed in year 2.
I mean,
he was good as a rookie.
If you're good enough to share right guard in your rookie year, it probably means you should be the starter right now, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's all about consistency. I mean, if you don't play with any consistency, that's part of why
that's Burford's problem. That's perfect. Yeah. That is the problem that Chris Forrester was just talking about.
Yeah, he doesn't, Burford's has a lot of talent, but there'll be a couple plays so he doesn't, it's like anything. It's like, you could be the greatest corner in the league for 38 plays, but if you give up 2 touchdowns, on the other 2 plays, you had a bad day. So it's, that's where Burford's at. He's in a lot of ways, he's the physical prototype. He's smart. He's got long arms, perfect body for right guard. It's just a matter of, can he be consistent? Snap after snap after snap. And now Pooney's in the mix. And you would imagine Pooney as a younger player will even be more inconsistent, but he also has a lot of talent and might have higher upside. So, I mean, yeah, Pooney and Burford could share right guard. Nugent or Kingston could take the center job away from Brendel. How likely, I don't know. Feliciano could wind up plugging in at guard or center. So they've got some competition on their offensive line this summer for sure.
Well, and we'll get into how important guard and center play is across the offensive line. It might even be as important as tackle play now, because of the way that the league is trending. But that is just a second. One last guy I want to bring up who might get mathed off this roster is Samuel Womack. Like, he's still unrefined. He's still undefined. They don't even know if he's an outside corner or a nickel. And Ambry Thomas and Darrell Luter, I think, are ahead of him. And a guy like Samuel Womack could find himself out on these streets when the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a mistake, in my opinion. I mean, last year they cut Deshaun Jameson, and he went to Carolina. He wound up having a good year playing for the Panthers, and the Niners had to cycle through some, Anthony Browns and some street free agents at the corner, and they never should have cut Deshaun Jameson. They kept Matt Pryor, a 4th offensive lineman who never played a snap and was never trusted to play a snap. They kept him on the roster, and they got rid of Deshaun Jameson, and it was a huge mistake, and it burned him throughout the year, and it burned him consistently. So I think getting rid of Womack is another same kind of move. You're moving off of a corner that can play in this league. So, yeah, the numbers say it's going to be tough, right? You got Mooney Ward, and you've got Demo. I think Luter's probably the other starter.
And I like Ambry Thomas more than most. I really do. I think Ambry Thomas, even though you just said you can play well for 32 plays, but then you screw up the other 2 and now you're the dick. And he's been handed that he screwed it up today card a few times and he's played himself into it, but he's good. And he's got that body that they want.
Well, but I think it's his time may have come and gone too. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, they brought in Isaac Yiadom. He's a big corner with talent.
Rock Ya-Sin
if he's healthy. That he's an NFL caliber corner. Chase Lucas, they brought in as a special teamer. They like him. You've got Ambry, you've got Womack. I think Womack makes it, to be honest. If I had to say the 5, I would say it's Mooney and Lenore and Luter, 1, 2, 3. And then 4 and 5 are probably Renardo Green.
Right.
And Yiadom. And I would say I would go with 6, and I would go with Womack as number 6. So we'll see. So that means Ambry gets cut. So yeah, I mean they've got really good depth on the corner. And who knows? I mean, they don't know who's going to play free safety. So it's like, is it going to be Jair Brown or is he going to play strong safety? If Afonga's not there, then maybe Brown plays strong safety. Do you start Malik Mustafa? Do you start George Odom? But Matt Barrows thinks George Odom's the starter. I think of George Odom as a special teamer exclusively. So maybe Renardo Green, who's played some free safety, maybe they'll go coverage over physicality and go with the guy who can cover in Renardo Green. So there's a chance, there's a bunch of different looks that could come out of this thing, but I somehow think they got to figure out a way to prioritize retaining their corner depth because, man, when you run out of corners, it's a rough deal.
It gets exposed. You can get exposed quickly there for sure. Like and subscribe. Wake up. Back to 3 days a week this week. Then Larry, I'm actually heading up to Tahoe for like half of next week. So I don't think we're going to have a Wednesday or Friday show next week for Wake Up because I got a little mini vacation coming up. The only one I'm taking this summer. And that will get the wife and the kids off my back. So I'm going to have to do that. But like and subscribe. It's great to have you here. Thank you very much for watching Wake Up. Final thing that I got for you here until we get into some maybe other headlines around the league is the importance of interior offensive line play. I was listening to a podcast, Greg Cosell, and God, I can't remember who it was. Greg Cosell and somebody, X's and O's, that podcast. I think I forget who the other guy is.
Doug Farrar, maybe?
Doug Farrar. Thank you very much. It is Doug Farrar. And he was talking about how much the Raiders invested in defensive lineman Christian Wilkins in free agency. And the thing that Cosell pivoted to was that Wilkins had 6 sacks last year and 22 pressures against quarterbacks taking 0 to 3 step drops last season. So now we're not just measuring sacks. It's, did you get that sack on a 3-step drop? And this guy is good at doing that. I think we are entering an age where the ball is out so fast that the best way to get to a quarterback is with a defensive lineman more than it is a defensive end or an edge rusher who are just being, I think, strategically taken out of a level of threat that, the ball's out and on a 3rd step presents. So maybe this is the year where Javon Hargrave, who truly is a very good pass rushing D tackle, reveals himself. Same thing for Jordan Elliott. These guys, I think the 49ers defensive line has to be an awful lot better in that middle because we're living in an age where, guys like, Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa are, I just think going to be playing reduced roles based on strategy.
Well, the numbers show that every year that goes by, that the guys who sack the quarterback are less and less defensive tackles and defensive ends and more smaller guys, linebackers, safeties, and corners. So that's been the trend, is that every year, fewer defensive tackles, fewer defensive ends sack the quarterback, and more sacks are coming from dogs and blitzes, dogs or linebacker blitzes and safeties and corners coming off the edge. You're seeing that more delayed blitzes from inside linebackers who play coverage for 2 seconds and then see it's a pass play and then shoot a gap. So we're seeing more. I mean, guys like Jamal Adams and Devin White, they're literally not pass rushers, but their position is to rush the passer. Devin White does it as a delayed blitzer from his inside linebacker spot, and Jamal Adams does it as a delayed blitzer from his safety spot. But they're essentially like defensive ends. They're basically pass rushers, just masquerading at other positions. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's become a much more diversified deal at the line of scrimmage on every pass play, where you don't know who's coming and you don't know who's dropping. And that's kind of the way it is right now. That's the trend. So you may have defensive tackles who are rushing and defensive ends that are dropping into hook zones. You may have defensive tackles that are dropping into coverage, and here comes a strong side backer or a corner or a safety. But teams are rushing 4 and dropping 7, and they're rushing 3 and dropping 8. But what they're doing is they're changing up who those 3 rushers are, who those 4 rushers are, and they're not giving you that comfort look of where they're coming from. And so then it's a matter of we got to make your offensive linemen communicate and figure out on the fly, as they're in their pass sets, who's coming, and then what's the adjustment if the guy in front of you drops into coverage. Do you make the right decisions over and over and over again? So that's kind of what I'm seeing in offensive line play. They're making offensive linemen make decisions on the fly by dropping defensive linemen into coverage and bringing that 4th rusher from parts unknown and figure it out. You figure out where the 4th guy's coming from. And it's wreaking havoc.
Taking Nick Bosa and saying, on this play, you're over the center. You're over the guard.
Yeah, you can always move around. You see that around the league as well. Some Micah Parsons moves around. Bosa can move around. I mean, yeah, when you have a big-time rusher, you can line them up in the A-gap if you feel like you've got, that double A-gap pressure has become a big, very in vogue thing. Make the center pick one of the 2 guys, and then whoever he doesn't pick, shoot the other guy through the A-gap and see if you can bother the quarterback and get the ball out quicker. You're seeing that double A-gap pressure, look. That's like a staple now around the league.
Before we move on to a couple of other NFL headlines, Larry, let's hop into a couple of these super chats that you got going on. We got a request from Mike Baker saying, answer the super chats, please. Okay, let's get into it.
Kyle Bent says he's not gonna sit the season out. No reason to sign him when he has 1 more year, and chemistry with Brock will still be good. He's talking about.
I know who he's talking about.
He's talking about Aiyuk, right?
Yeah. Again, keyword there is chemistry. Is he going to be a happy camper if he doesn't get what he wants? And is that going to screw up the chemistry in the room? Chemistry with, Brock is pretty assured. I was told it was going to get even better when they had a full offseason together. And now that seems to be not nearly as important as it was when Kyle Shanahan talked about it early in the offseason. So I would just like everyone in together and kumbaya-ing right now.
Mike Baker says, have the 49ers ever kept a guy who didn't want to be there?
No, they never forced a guy to be a Niner.
Trying to think if they had Robbie Gold. Didn't Robbie Gold demand a trade and they said, no, we're not trading you?
Kind of.
There you go. Mike, Robbie Gold wanted out. They wouldn't let him out.
Robbie Gold, but at the same time, remember, he's just a kicker, and you don't even have to treat a kicker like a human being. They're just kickers.
Right. 49er Talk Show says, here's a donation. $26 million is a fair price, BA. He's just a crybaby. He's lucky the 49ers are paying him that much. He really deserves 19 to 22 million. BA is delusional.
Again, it sounds like he's being a little bit greedy, but looking to ring that bell loud on your second deal is the right of every good player in football. Nothing here lasts forever. And I don't begrudge Brandon Aiyuk for wanting as much money as possible and thinking, hey, I'm a number one wide receiver. I'm the number one wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers right now. I'm not imagining that. I'm not hoping that I become that one day. That's who I am right now. So I want to be paid like a number one guy. I understand why he wants that. I also understand that the Niners would probably acquiesce and give it to him had, Brock Purdy not been scheduled to get a 50x raise starting next year. It's tough. What would be great is if the NFL just said, here's the new deal. Quarterbacks don't count towards the salary cap. Then you could keep great teams together going forward for a real long time, and the entire league would get better.
I'll tell you what I would love. I would love a commitment to the draft by just saying, hey, if you draft a player, he doesn't count the same on your cap as if you sign a player.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So then you're incentivizing basically roster building and building through the draft by saying, hey, you know what? You draft Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears, you've got a quarterback on your roster that, doesn't count as much against the cap as if you went out and signed, Caleb Williams away from the Chicago Bears in 5 years and made him your star.
Keeping talent that you drafted and developed on your team shouldn't be punitive.
Right. And not only that, it should be incentivized because that is the relationship that leads to fans buying jerseys and having that, how do fans have that tie to their team? That tie is a hard thing to kind of measure, right? Like, how tied to your team are you? Well, it's measured through attendance. It's measured through merchandising, how many jerseys are sold, and so on and so forth. And to me, it seems like perfectly good business, not just in football, but really other sports as well, to incentivize players to stay. Having free agency is great, and you want to have it. But to me, you should always want to incentivize people to stay, because if George Brett stays in Kansas City and Kirby Puckett stays in Minnesota and, Buster Posey stays in San Francisco and Derek Jeter stays with the Yankees, now we're building brand loyalty in individual markets. And that, I think, is vitally important to merchandising and revenue streams and so on and so forth.
It's how teams connect.
And I also think it's like, like Wayne Huizenga did a bad thing, right? He bought the Marlins. He came in, destroyed the financial structure by signing all these free agents, won a World Series, and then checked out, sold the team, and left a wake of destruction in his path there after they left, because they raised the bar and all these salaries and so on and so forth. And there's volatility that the Marlins had. They came out of nowhere. They won a World Series. They returned to nowhere. They started tanking. It's just not good for the sport to have that kind of volatility. So how do you avoid it? You avoid it by incentivizing the homegrown nature of building. And so, you know what? If you drafted Debo, you drafted Aiyuk, in an ideal world, you should get a tremendous benefit because you drafted those guys. Like right now in the NFL, it's almost like what you don't want a bunch of extra picks, because at the end of the day, you're just drafting for the rest of the league, because you can only have so many guys you can put on your roster anyway. And then it's like, if you draft 4 corners and they're all like, Detroit added like 5 different corners this year. Well, they're only going to have like 5 corners on their roster. That means they're probably going to wind up cutting one of the guys that they drafted. So they kind of wind up drafting one of those guys for somebody else. That's the one downside of the NFL, is that, they don't have any incentive to, make it so that the guys that you draft don't count against the cap. And so you draft a certain number of players. Well, you keep a certain number, and then the rest of them have to go through waivers and they find their way to other teams. To me, I think you'd see it would be more interesting if the players that you drafted somehow became stars. You get to keep them. You get to keep them at maybe a third of the cap price. So if you're suddenly the Rams draft terribly for years and years, they want to go in and say, you know what, we're going to go sign 19, like Commanders this year signed 20 free agents. 20 free agents. Now they're going to compete with Dallas and Philly and the Giants. They're going to wind up competing in that division right away because they signed 20 free agents. But is that a good thing for a team to have a new head coach and go sign 20 veterans? I don't know if that's a good thing. I
think not a good thing, but it's probably a necessary evil when you look at how poorly that team was run. You come in and you start to aggressively course correct.
There's holes everywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's fine with me. I just think teams should be able to keep the players that they want without suffering massive consequences elsewhere in the roster when you draft and develop a guy that you really like. Plus, it's good for the game.
And you're right. Not only is it good for the game,
it'll be better for the football play, the players, the quarterback chemistry,
And also it's been proven, I think, at this point through the years that name me the player who was a big-time free agent, who was a good player with their initial team and became a greater player with their second team. The player that leaves in free agency, his departure hurts his former team way more than his arrival helps his current team. I mean, Javon Hargrave's a perfect example of that this last year. How much did Javon Hargrave really help the Niners? Not that much. Not that much. But how much did he hurt the Eagles by leaving? Kind of a lot. So it's and that kind of thing happens over and over again because there's different systems and it takes a while to learn the systems.
The only totally came out in the wash is Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill was good in both spots.
He leaves the Kansas City Chiefs, who have won 2 Super Bowls since he has left, and he shows up in Miami, and he, nearly had a 2,000-yard season last year. He was spectacular. He really was.
He was. So. That's a good call. He might be the guy who's like maybe the equal. Tyreek in Miami is probably the equal to Tyreek in Kansas City. But there's hardly anybody who's like, man, they were pretty good there, but then they went to this team and they were spectacular.
I got one for you.
Randy Moss.
Christian McCaffrey.
But he had a pretty damn good, awesome year.
Yeah, he was
Carolina that one year.
He was really good for that 1 year in Carolina. He got
healthier. I can give you another one too. How about here's one: Marshawn Lynch. He was okay in Buffalo as a first-round pick. He was beast mode in Seattle. So he was better in Seattle. But it's pretty rare. Usually it's the other way. Usually, like, you're better in your first team, then you go to that second team and you're a contributor, but you're not quite as good. Not quite as good. We got one more here from Kevin Wood, who says, BA will suit up week 1. We did this with Bosa and Debo. Pearsall is obviously Debo's successor. Only way Aiyuk gets traded is for another player. That's interesting. Only way Aiyuk gets traded is for another player. So he's saying basically it makes no sense to trade Aiyuk for a draft choice inside your Super Bowl window, which I totally agree with.
But at the same time,
I wouldn't say that
the window stays open, then, looking at 2024 is the only year you're going to compete is the wrong way to go about it. And of course, these teams are thinking about more than 1 year.
And also this, I didn't like what the Niners did with Bosa or Debo. I don't think that it benefited Bosa. He wasn't as good. Debo wasn't as good. It doesn't, to me, it's not consolation to be like, well, BA is like those guys and he'll show up week 1. He's a receiver that needs to get in rhythm with his quarterback. I don't like the idea of him showing up week 1. And if he does show up week 1, he's probably not worth the same money as he would be if he could get it done earlier. I mean, you need your quarterback and your receiver to be in lockstep. And to say Pearsall is obviously Debo's successor, I guess you could make that assumption. But I mean, Greg Cosell was asked the other day, who's Pearsall more like? And he says that he's much more like Aiyuk as a player than Debo. So, but doesn't mean that he's not Debo's successor, as you're saying. I hear what you're saying that Pearsall's Debo's successor. I think that's what we are all assuming at this point. But as Silver points out, if Aiyuk and the Niners don't get on the same page and Aiyuk comes back at the 5th-year option, Aiyuk and Debo literally will compete this year to see which guy stays and which guy leaves. They both won't stay. They both potentially could leave, but most likely only one of the two will stay. And it's probably Aiyuk. But if Aiyuk flips them the bird and Debo has a great year, Debo could wind up being here long term, and Aiyuk could be moved on. So I don't think it's etched in stone. Let's just say that. Those are our supers. You want a couple more topics before we jet? Or
well, no, so I just got a couple more things. Number one, for those who don't know, I kind of went public. You can take Kevin down. Thank you very much, Kevin. The Hall of Fame game in Canton has been announced. Our first preseason game is going to be the Bears, who are on Hard Knocks this year, and it's going to be Bears and Texans. August 1st, your first preseason game. The second week of preseason features the Saints and 49ers on Sunday, August 18th, and that is going to be a nationally televised game on Fox.
Tom Brady's debut, they're saying.
Is that going to be Brady's debut at the
They're
Super
saying
Bowl?
that might be Brady's like tune-up, that they may do some practice rounds that week.
Good. I hope
Nacho says, I think Larry has the Bears beating us. I do, we went through that schedule, exercise of, hey, well, they win here and they lose here, they win here and they lose here. And, it's like we all have watched enough football to know that exercise is not worth doing because you just can't predict who's going to win. You're almost assuredly going to win a game that you have as a loss, and you're almost assuredly going to lose a game that you have marked down as a win. And to me, I just think that, the Niners are probably going to beat the Bears, but I just put the Bears down as a random loss for the Niners, just because why not? Why not? I don't really have any real conviction on it. But
here's the conviction. By the time they meet in the regular season further down the road, maybe, Williams has figured it out a little bit. Maybe they got a little something going defensively. So we'll see. They added talent. Let's see if it comes together and gels. Maybe
Williams gets hurt and they're playing behind Austin Reed.
I do know for a fact that the first win ever in the history of Levi's Stadium belongs to the Chicago Bears. First regular season win in Levi's Stadium history. So, Soldier Field West, as I like to call it, Larry. Darren Waller, retiring from the NFL at age 31. His personal habits early in his career betrayed him with an addiction that he got over. And I don't know if he ever really grew up, Darren Waller, done at 31. Incredible waste of talent, if you really look at it. I mean, he was physically built to be a Hall of Fame tight end in a passing to your tight end like never before league. And unfortunately for Darren Waller, he just couldn't get the mentals together. He couldn't get healthy at the right time. His situation deteriorated just in football, going from Raiders to the Giants. And
the Raiders obviously got off at the right time, huh? Because didn't the Raiders get a pretty decent draft haul for him? Didn't they get like a first-round pick or a second-round pick or something like that?
I don't know, but he was good. He was good with the Raiders.
He's a very good player. He's still a very good player. I'm surprised that he's retiring. I mean, you're right, though. He had a bad drug situation. He discovered himself, figured out a way, saved his life, figured out a way to have a career. But this makes you wonder if he's relapsing, because it makes you wonder if
some of the videos that he's been putting up, I mean, they just don't make sense. He is.
Yeah. I mean, it's, he's an enormous talent.
He's got
you said to me
written all over him, Larry. He feels like a lost soul.
I thought you said law school.
No.
He's got law school written all over him, Larry. I'm like, what? He's going to law school. No, but yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you had to wager everything you own on Darren Waller never playing another snap again or playing another snap again, what would you wager on? I would wager on playing a snap again. He's too young, too talented. The money's too intriguing. The position is, his skill set is too rare to walk away at 31. I mean, he's probably, there's Kelsey, there's Kittle, there's Laporta, there's 4 or 5 tight ends that are just like in that elite status. He's right there. He's right there with the elite players at his position, and he's not old.
Yeah. No,
so I think he gets it going. I think he sits out. I bet you within a year, Darren Waller's making a comeback. That would be my guess, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But
Anthony C says, waste of talent. Bruce, you're a clown. What? he had an incredible amount of ungodly, given by God talent that he has squandered. I mean,
did he call you an actual clown or was it a clown emoji?
No, he actually wrote CLOWN.
Here it
So
is.
that's good. That's good.
Anthony C. Waste of talent. Bruce, you're a clown.
And then the next Anthony, right underneath him, is
at least he didn't go ass clown.
Waller was
ass clown's better.
And a bust through and through. So again, he's ass and a bust through and through. But I say wasted talent, and I'm a clown, dude. I mean, know what wasted potential is.
You're a clown. Freaking clown.
Clown show.
Clown show over here. I'm going to start changing this to Krug and the Clown.
By the way,
I don't know. I mean, to say that he's a waste of talent, I understand where you're coming from because he is an enormous talent and he's walking away, I would say, a good 2 or 3 years before what is the normal end of a football career. But he just may be kind of a tortured soul. Yeah. And I don't know him well enough to speak on it one way or another, but there is something there. I would push back on Anthony C and say Damon's not a clown. He's just noticing that a player who's an enormous talent, his career is being cut short by by his own doing. And seemingly when he's at the top. I mean, it's like this is a really good football player. This guy would command a double team today if there was a game. So I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, waste of talent makes it seem like they drafted him and he never did anything. He found his career, but definitely a very bizarre end.
Yeah, the guy had.
You want wasted talent, bizarre end, however you want to term it. But this is not a normal progression of an NFL, a great NFL player. It's just not. So there's that old saying, there's a backstory sometimes. There's a backstory here. I guarantee you. We don't know what it is, but there's some backstory.
Often a backstory includes, addiction troubles. And look, Aldon Smith, waste of talent. Aldon Smith could have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, all decade level player in the NFL, but he acquiesced to his demons, and that's it. We haven't heard of him again. And that's sad. I mean, it's there are guys who get handed, they get dealt genetic pocket aces, and yet they still don't win the hand of poker. And it's sad when that happens.
It just goes to show that, man, you really do need to. Do you need physical dominance and the talent? Absolutely, but you also need, a certain amount of work ethic, a certain amount of drive, a certain amount of goal-orientedness to you. There's other factors besides just raw size, speed, strength, talent. And sometimes guys figure it out. Sometimes they figure it out for a short amount of time. It seems like maybe he's in that weird category of he kind of, couldn't figure it out, got straight, figured it out, found a way to make some money. But for whatever reason, he seems like he's shortchanging himself on the back end of his career. Hopefully there's no trip to rehab or anything like that in his future. Hopefully he's just making this decision because there's other things that interest him in his life, but this does seem bizarre. A guy this talented and this coveted would be out of football this soon.
Right. Tight ends with his level of talent should be making $15 to $20 million a year, not retiring at 31. Also, you want to talk about a guy who I hope turns it all around, doesn't waste his inherent talent. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice is vowing to be a better person. Read this story. He's 24 years old and has basically used all of his career mulligans in his first off season. He causes a bad car accident, which left several people injured. He was responsible. His name was on the lease of 2 of the cars involved. So he's racing in the streets. Then he gets into a club fight. He's got an assault charge on him. He's only 24 years old. He's got one Super Bowl ring and 2 criminal trials hanging over him in 1 year in football. And this can go either way. Rashee Rice, you're a 24-year-old who realizes that you have an awful lot to protect, and you start going about living a life that protects the investment that you're making in your career, or you do squander it and you get into another bar fight or another drag race, and you're going to be out of football. So I hope he gets it right, man.
Yeah, all I would say to Rashee Rice is slow the fuck down, man. Slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
I actually see these people, I'll see images. I'm sure you see them on social media as well, of people spinning out and their car is wildly spinning and they hit somebody and the person goes flying up in the air and lands on their head or whatever. I'm sitting there watching this going, how crazy stupid do you have to be to stand around as cars are spinning wildly? Waiting to get hit, waiting to get killed.
Right. There's a big difference between standing around that circle and sitting in the Shamu splash zone at SeaWorld, where you're just going to get a little water on you. This could be a 2,000-pound vehicle on you. So
crushing you.
Yeah.
And
get away.
At best, you're going to get knocked crazy. I don't get that. I don't understand that. I see that all the time. Guys get, they're standing there and a car's flipping around in circles, and it's like they're standing there, and then all of a sudden they just get knocked into the air, and it's like, bro, you're lucky you didn't get that car didn't roll over on top of you and just crush you. Yeah, weird world we're in. Weird world.
Well, like why bother doing that in an intersection? Like go to a big parking lot, get all the space you need. Go to the Coliseum parking lot and do your sideshows all over the place.
I don't get it. Why take that chance? Why take that chance of getting mowed down? It's got to be a bad way to go too, to get rolled over by a vehicle. I can't be comfortable.
No. Oh man, I saw this one video where a guy was sitting like Bo and Duke Luke style, like sitting on the window as the car is doing its donuts, and the car flipped over right on him.
It's like,
that's mostly an unsurvivable event. You don't want to do that. Make good choices, kids. That's how we wrap up today's Wake Up. Make good choices. Like a Michi's. There's good choices waiting for you. Yeah, it's a tough transition, Larry, but we do have to wrap up. I got to take a leak before my 11 o'clock show starts.
A good decision, kind of like, maybe farming out Luis Matos for Austin Slater.
Hey, why not? Why not? Hey,
finals over. NBA finals over. Boston's up 2-0.
That's the thing. Mavericks are going to decide whether or not this is anything more than a gentleman's sweep in Game 3. It feels that way. It feels like it's Boston's year, man. Boston's got the look. They got the.
They were 14 games better in the regular season. That's a lot.
Luka is a one-man army when Kyrie sort of goes into his turtle mode. And I don't know. Look, I don't know if it's Boston putting the clamps on him or Kyrie just being uncomfortable back in Boston, but he was not himself in Boston. He's lost a lot of games against Boston since being traded by them. So maybe they got a little something on him. But Luka feels like his body is betraying him, and he's still a 30-point triple-double. Like, the guy's awesome. But Luka is basically wondering if anybody's going to join him in this NBA Finals. No other Dallas Mavericks have answered the bell. When Derek White of the Boston Celtics is hitting his threes, it's curtains.
Yeah.
He's a really good player, and he's a good defensive player. And when he's contributing offensively the way that he has over the first 2 games, you're in a lot of trouble. Tatum hasn't even had a good game yet, Larry. Like, what happens when Tatum joins the crowd? So this is a lot of Celtics. Boston in 5 is what this is kind of feeling like. I hope that Dallas can get Game 3 just to make Game 4 interesting. I hope Dallas gets Game 3 just to make Game 4 interesting. If they don't, it could be El Schweepo and the Broomhilda emoji gets released.
I've got this one from Doc Holliday. Says Larry needs some. What was that?
Headphones.
I like my headphones. I like my earbuds.
You look like you're waiting for a bus more than you're a broadcast. You know who's got the best earbud situation? Our pal Guy Haberman. Guy's got all that TV career, so he's got the really well, probably molded, customed to his own ear. Was it called IBF, IP, whatever it is, the
IFB.
The IFB. Thank you very much. Again, I haven't spent a lot of time in front of the camera until this freaking YouTube thing started. So here we are. But yeah, you do need some. Maybe that's what I'll get you for Christmas, Larry. Maybe I will get you.
My wife says, the wireless, could cause, some terrible internal this and that. So she's telling me I should go with the headphones.
What do you think
and
these
not
are?
the wireless.
What do you think these are? We're wired up.
Well, the thing is, the only thing is, I never loved wearing the headphones with the top up here. I usually used to wear it like back here, kind of.
You tried to be cool guy. You were this guy.
Yeah, I just didn't like that whole kind of matted down across the middle of my head kind of a thing,
See, my hair is glorious. It bounces back.
But then you've got that kind of, that little, those wires going across the top. I don't know. To me, I like the clean look.
It's okay. I don't mind looking like I'm in a studio, because that's what we're pretending this room is. And the only thing that I don't like about it, I don't mind the top. I don't like looking like Princess Leia a little bit, but there's no other way to go about that.
That hairdo?
I do have
hot hairdo. It's
a
hot hairdo at Halloween time.
The Leia.
The Leia look.
So we're going to have ourselves a wake up on Wednesday and on Friday this week. We're sorry that we were off last week, just busy schedules, but we're back at it. And dude, I think this Sunday night, I saw something that there are 13 more Sundays until football.
G. Martinez looks like the guy from had the ear muffs and Something About Mary. The younger brother,
the brother
who's mentally challenged.
Yes,
that's my ball. That guy. He
was funny, man.
That was a classic.
That was such a funny movie.
And who was a beautiful woman who's in that movie who's no longer with us is Markie Post.
That's right. That's right. Markie Post was in that
from Night Court.
Big Markie Post fan back in the day. John Larroquette and Markie Post were phenomenal.
John Larroquette has not done anything since then. No. Must Be Trouble says, wait till Larry finds out they make headphones that wrap around the back.
They do. You can get like the sports spec level of these.
Look at that. Maybe I'll go for that. The wraparounds.
I'm excited to see.
I feel like there was some other topic we wanted to discuss that we have yet to hit. Didn't we discuss something in the pregame that we were going to hit that we haven't hit?
Dan Hurley maybe taking the Lakers gig.
Oh yeah. I was going to tell you on that front. I think I've got the odds out. My friend Jimmy Shapiro sent me the odds.
Oh,
so the finals MVP favorite is Jaylen Brown. Okay.
I'm telling you right now, if I had to load up right now, I might put it on Drew Holiday. He has been phenomenal in the NBA Finals so far. Yeah, but Larry, we could get Celtics win it all, Luka MVP. We could get that for the first time since Jerry West and the Lakers, I think, got beaten by a Celtics team where West was the standout player and named MVP in a losing effort. I think we might even. How about this? If Luka has another triple double with 30 plus. While it's just a team effort in Boston, that could maybe happen this year.
He doesn't play much D. By the way, on the Danny Hurley. So where will Danny Hurley coach basketball? They have minus 400 Lakers, plus 300 UConn. The odds give the Lakers an 80% chance of hiring Danny Hurley. What do you think? I mean, it was J.J. Redick, Danny Hurley, Jay Wright's name has gotten thrown into the mix. Jay Wright.
Smiley Dan is saying that an announcement's been made. He's staying at UConn.
Yeah, I to me, when he said I need more time, that sounded like let's give UConn an ability to match or to whatever, to up their offer. I'll say this. I think Danny Hurley's making the right decision. he reeks of a Northeast rule following jackass. You know what I mean? He doesn't seem like an LA guy. He's not cool in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing cool about Danny Hurley. He would be a fish out of water. He seems like a little bit more of a disciplinarian. That's
way
never
too
gonna...
amped up. He's
way too amped up.
He lives and dies on possessions in ways that, you better be coaching college if that's how you're going to react to the game in front of you, because you can't do that 82 times a year in the NBA.
No, and they've got a top 5 team coming back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's got that program at a high level. The Lakers, it's a prestigious job, but
just in, Dan Hurley just turned down the Lakers' 6-year, $70 million offer and is returning to UConn. He's been in the college game for such a short amount of time. Maybe he's just not burnt out on it yet.
He just seems like he made a good decision. He made a good decision. I think so. I mean, that guy is made for Stores, Connecticut over LA. But I mean, think about that for a second. Anybody who's ever been to Stores and been to LA, you could have lived in Laguna and got your own helicopter and helicoptered to practice, and you could have been just living in just an awesome spot in Malibu or whatever.
You want to go Brentwood? You want to go Manhattan Beach? And you're like, no, Hartford. Hartford's the place for me.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's my sister lives in Farmington. I know there's nice areas of Connecticut. I mean, Greenwich is the most expensive real estate in the country, Southern Connecticut. But I mean, those people are all New Yorkers who are going to New York.
Right.
If
you live on the I-95 power quarter of financial wealth, you can do just fine. The entire rest of the state of Connecticut is the biggest yawn. It makes Delaware look like Las Vegas. I mean, Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, you spent time there.
I ever lived. Worst place I ever lived. Most racist place I've ever lived.
Connecticut?
Connecticut is full of old racist Italian men. I mean, just angry.
Really?
Oh my God, the most racist place I ever lived. It was also when me and my boy Jason McBride, who is still one of my best friends to this day, we hung out an awful lot, and he is a very large black man, and I watched Connecticut play off him just next to him and watched all the shit that he had to deal with, and it was amazing. I even said to him one night at ESPN, I'm like, how are you not knocking everybody out, dude? How are you? This is unbelievable what is happening to you. So
Rob Watson says, hey, now, what's wrong with Delaware?
Delaware's awesome. I'm sorry. Delaware, great place to have a tax shelter. Go Delaware.
It's got a couple of decent racetracks. By the way, yeah, you saw the Belmont over the weekend at Saratoga.
At Saratoga. I didn't watch it.
I've never been to Saratoga. But glorious. Saratoga for the Belmont, they said there was more people at Saratoga than ever that show up for the Springs in August.
Well, so Saratoga's big signature race has always been the Whitney Stakes. Like the Whitney Stakes gets network TV.
That's in August. It's a late summer meet, right?
Yes, it is. Yep. Saratoga, thoroughbred was the jingle that I listened to all the time growing up, and they'd say, Saratoga, the August place to be. So
yeah, no, that is the place to be. Supposedly, though I do love Tahoe in August. I mean, I'm a Tahoe man myself in August, but you know what? Saratoga in August, they say, is beautiful. All right, that is going to do it for us. You got anything else you want to tease? What do you got cooking the rest of the day?
It's good to know that you're a Tahoe guy, Lowry. I'm glad to know that you enjoy the outdoors. Regardless, I love Tahoe in the summer.
Yeah, get the Miata and go up the hill and get an ice cream, and I like to play a little golf, and I take Tate, and we have a good time. We bet a little baseball. Once you hit that incline in Truckee, you really feel the front of the Miata start tipping up the mountain, and you go underneath that bridge, and you see an old mining town, and you tell Tate, "This is your last chance to get any Amichis before we hit the mountains."
I've always said I like Tahoe, and you know what? All those years working for the Niners, Lowry and Damon, I never made it up to Tahoe.
Yeah, didn't go once.
I never went one time. Never one time. I just stayed in my humble abode in the South Bay, and I never made it. But you know what? Someday I'll make it back to the Bay Area. And damn it, I'm going to Tahoe.